What if the ancient philosophers were right when they claimed that understanding yourself means understanding the entire universe? What if the patterns you see in nature, from the branching of trees to the structure of coastlines, follow the same mathematical principles that govern your own body and mind? Today we're exploring one of philosophy's most enduring concepts, the principle of macro and microcosm. This isn't mystical thinking. It's a documented philosophical tradition that spans from ancient Greece to medieval Europe, and modern mathematics has revealed surprising connections between patterns at different scales that validate aspects of this ancient insight. The macro and microcosm principle was developed by ancient Greek philosophers, describing human beings and their place in the universe, viewing the individual as a little world, micros cosmos, whose composition and structure correspond to that of the greater world. The term first appears in the Physics of Aristotle, 384–322 BCE, where it occurs in an incidental remark. While Plato did not use the specific terminology, his philosophy incorporated the underlying concept extensively. In Plato's Timaeus, the demiurge creates a living and intelligent universe, positioning mortal organisms as a microcosm of the great macrocosm. The idea was central to most Greek thought, especially that of Pythagoras, Plato and subsequent Neoplatonism. These philosophers saw the universe as fundamentally ordered, and believed that understanding this order in one domain provided insight into other domains. The view was elaborated by the Jewish philosopher Philo, circa 20 BCE to 50 CE, who adopted it from Hellenistic philosophy. Similar ideas appeared in early rabbinical literature and became prominent themes in Jewish philosophical works during the Middle Ages. The concept spread across cultures and intellectual traditions, appearing in various forms across different civilizations. The model appeared in ancient Iranian thought, becoming well attested in religions that developed during the Sasanian period, including Manichaeism, Mazdaism, and Nestorian Christianity. Philosophical speculations about the microcosm and macrocosm became closely connected with medicine and astrology in these traditions, developing into structured systems of correspondences between human physiology and cosmic elements. The macro and microcosm analogy became extensively developed during the Middle Ages and Renaissance periods. The Swiss physician and alchemist, Paracelsus, developed the schema further. He proposed that within man was an inner heaven with stars, basing his philosophy of correspondences on the belief that for every ailment and illness in man, the microcosm, there existed a cure in nature, the macrocosm. Medieval scholars created elaborate systems mapping relationships between different levels of reality. They correlated bodily organs with planets, metals with psychological states, and geometric forms with spiritual principles. These weren't random associations, but systematic attempts to map what they believed were real correspondences between different scales of existence. The human body was studied as a model for understanding universal principles, while cosmic patterns were examined to gain insight into human nature. Alchemical traditions incorporated the macro-microcosm principle as foundational to their practice. Alchemists viewed their laboratory work as simultaneously operating on multiple levels. The physical transformation of substances in the laboratory was understood to mirror psychological and spiritual transformations occurring within the practitioner. This multivalent approach allowed the same processes and symbols to carry meaning at different scales simultaneously. The Renaissance saw renewed interest in these concepts as classical Greek texts became more widely available in Western Europe. Scholars synthesized Greek, Islamic, and Christian traditions, creating comprehensive cosmologies built around the idea that similar patterns repeat at different scales of existence. These philosophical systems attempted to integrate knowledge from astronomy, medicine, psychology, and theology into unified frameworks based on correspondence principles. The terms macrocosm and microcosm refer respectively to the world as a whole and to some part, usually man, as a model or epitome of it, with one version claiming that man and the universe are constructed according to the same harmonic proportions. The core philosophical claim is that patterns, structures, and organizing principles found at one scale of reality have analogues at other scales. Microcosm is a Western philosophical term designating man as being a little world, in which the macrocosm, or universe, is reflected. This wasn't claiming literal identity, but rather structural similarity. The same types of relationships, proportions, and organizing principles were thought to appear whether examining the human body, social organizations, or cosmic structures. The philosophical utility of this principle was allowing knowledge gained in one domain to inform understanding in another domain. If the same organizing principles governed different levels of reality, then studying accessible phenomena could provide insight into less accessible phenomena. Understanding human physiology might reveal something about cosmic order, suggesting that observing celestial patterns might illuminate aspects of human psychology. This approach differed fundamentally from viewing each domain of knowledge as completely separate and unrelated. The macro-microcosm framework assumed an interconnected reality where patterns at one level genuinely corresponded to patterns at other levels. Whether this assumption is valid remains debated, but it generated productive frameworks for organizing knowledge and conducting investigations across multiple domains simultaneously. While ancient philosophy cannot be directly equated with modern science, mathematical discoveries have revealed genuine instances of pattern repetition across scales that resonate with aspects of the macro-microcosm idea. Fractals are infinitely complex patterns that are self-similar across different scales, created by repeating a simple process over and over in an ongoing feedback loop. The term fractal was introduced in 1975 by mathematician Benoit Mandelbrot, who explored patterns that didn't fit into the neat shapes of traditional geometry, with self-similarity meaning each small part looks like a tiny version of the whole. Theoretical fractals are infinitely self-similar iterated and detailed mathematical constructs, and fractals are not limited to geometric patterns, but can also describe processes in time. While infinite iteration is not possible in nature, so all fractal patterns are only approximate. Examples include the leaves of ferns, which are self-similar to 2, 3, or more levels. Coastlines, mountain ranges, cloud formations, river networks, and tree branching all display approximately fractal characteristics. The same mathematical relationships describing small-scale features also describe large-scale structure in these systems. The human body contains numerous approximately fractal structures. The bronchial passages in your lungs branch in patterns that repeat at progressively smaller scales. Blood vessels follow branching patterns similar across multiple scales from major arteries down to capillaries. These fractal-like structures solve similar problems at different scales using similar architectural principles, validating at least the geometric aspect of pattern repetition across scales. A fractal is self-similar in that it consists of parts, each of which in turn is made of parts that are exact scaled-down versions of the whole, with each part itself consisting of parts that are scaled-down versions of the whole. While no natural structure shows perfect mathematical fractal properties, the prevalence of approximate fractal geometry in nature demonstrates that scale-repeating patterns are indeed fundamental features of physical reality. The macro-microcosm principle offers a practical cognitive tool, pattern recognition across domains. When you identify a pattern or principle operating in one context, you can look for analogous patterns in other contexts. This cross-domain thinking can generate insights and solutions by transferring knowledge between fields. As an example, recognizing that your personal conflicts often mirror broader social conflicts allows you to apply strategies from one domain to the other. Solutions for navigating disagreements in relationships might inform approaches to community mediation. Understanding of crowd behavior might illuminate aspects of your own internal psychological conflicts between different desires or values. This doesn't require believing in mystical correspondences. It simply means recognizing that similar dynamics can appear in different contexts. Systems theory has formalized some of these insights, identifying organizational principles that appear across diverse systems. Feedback loops, emergent properties, and self-organization appear whether studying ecosystems, economies, or individual psychology. When facing a problem in one area of life, considering how similar problems manifest in other areas can suggest solutions. If you successfully created sustainable habits in one domain, the same principles that worked there might transfer to other domains. If you understand how to navigate transitions in your career, similar principles might apply to navigating transitions in relationships or personal development. The key is recognizing underlying structural similarities while respecting important differences. Not every analogy holds, and superficial similarities can be misleading. Thoughtful attention to how patterns repeat across contexts provides a valuable cognitive tool for learning, problem-solving, and understanding complex systems. The ancient philosophers formalized this as the macro-microcosm principle. Modern thinkers might call it systems thinking or cross-domain transfer. The core insight remains valuable regardless of terminology. You can apply macro-microcosm thinking practically starting today. When you notice a recurring pattern in your life, ask where else it appears. If you avoid difficult conversations at work, do you also avoid them in personal relationships? If you approach creative projects with perfectionism, does that same perfectionism affect other areas? Recognizing patterns across domains reveals core tendencies rather than isolated behaviors. Use observation of external systems to understand internal systems. How do ecosystems maintain balance? How do successful organizations handle change? How do rivers find their most efficient path? Natural and social systems often demonstrate principles applicable to personal psychology. Observing how other systems solve problems can suggest solutions for your own challenges. Practice translating solutions across scales. A technique that helps you calm down in moments of stress might also work for managing emotional patterns over longer timeframes. A principle that improves communication in one relationship might improve communication in others. Organizational strategies that work for your physical space might work for organizing your time or commitments. Consider decisions across multiple scales before acting. How will this choice affect you tomorrow, next week, and next year? How will it impact your immediate relationships, your broader community, and your long-term development? Decisions that create positive effects across multiple scales tend to be more sustainable than decisions that benefit one scale while creating problems at others. The macro-microcosm principle encourages holistic thinking. Rather than viewing different aspects of life as completely separate, look for connections and patterns. This doesn't mean everything is the same, but it does mean that insights from one domain often illuminate others. Ancient philosophers formalized this intuition into a systematic principle. You can use the same insight for practical benefit in navigating modern complexity. The macro and microcosm principle represents one of philosophy's enduring insights about pattern and correspondence across scales of reality. Ancient Greek philosophers developed this theory to describe human beings and their place in the universe, viewing individuals as little worlds whose composition corresponds to the greater world. This framework influenced Western thought for over 2 millennia, shaping medicine, psychology, and natural philosophy. While we cannot verify all claims made by ancient philosophers, modern mathematics has revealed that pattern repetition across scales is indeed a real feature of natural systems through fractal geometry. The philosophical principle and mathematical discovery aren't identical, but both recognize that similar structures and dynamics can appear at different scales. This validates the core insight driving the ancient framework, even if specific claims about correspondences cannot all be confirmed. Understanding this principle provides practical benefits. Pattern recognition across domains enhances problem solving. Holistic thinking reveals connections that purely reductionist approaches missed. Recognizing that insights from one scale might apply to others expands the cognitive tools available for navigating complexity. Whether called the macro-microcosm principle or systems of thinking, this approach offers valuable perspective for understanding yourself and the world. The ancient philosophers weren't primitive when they claimed correspondences between microcosm and macrocosm. They were articulating an intuition about pattern, structure, and the interconnected nature of reality that continues generating insight. Modern knowledge allows us to be more precise about which correspondences hold, and which don't, but the fundamental insight about seeking patterns across scales remains valuable for anyone pursuing wisdom. If you are intrigued how exploring ancient philosophy recognizes patterns, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to continue this journey through timeless wisdom and contemporary understanding.